Hey, everybody, it's the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast. This is what everyone has been talking about, and it seems like, Casey Thompson, host and creator, it seems like since you came up with this idea and we started doing these podcasts, that a lot more people have been talking about the subjects of enhancement talent and what the true art of putting someone over was in the ring during the television heyday. And kudos to you for being a thought leader and being ahead of the curve. Can we jump into the word? And you know what? I'm guilty of it too. I am guilty of treading lightly around the J word.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to offend. I don't want to say something wrong. I don't want to be, outcast. I'm afraid sometimes when I say the word jobber, because I'm afraid I'm going to offend you or someone else.
Well, I can tell you this, Kevin. The word jobber does not offend me whatsoever because the way I look at it, everyone in the wrestling business from the bottom up was a jobber. When I was with WCW, I would do the job, say, for Chavo Guerrero. Chavo Guerrero would do the job for Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit would do the job going up. Basically, everyone was a job guy for the top guy, which was Hogan at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, we all were job guys.
Do you know the
So it doesn't
origin?
offend me.
No, and that's good to know. That is good to know. Jobber, 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 jobber. Okay, good. Now I got it out of my system.
I mean, you might get heat from Bob Cook and Barry Horowitz and stuff like that, but you're not going to by me, so it's all good.
Hey, Mr. Perfect said we were talking during voiceovers one time, and he said the same thing. He said, "Hey, we're all jobbers." So he was loving on the enhancement guys. He was really like, because Vince was like, "Why are you putting them over so much, pal?" Because we're all jobbers, Vince. Come on.
What did Vince have a reaction to that?
No, not really. Probably just more than an eyebrow or whatever.
Now that brings up a question. So when you were around when they were doing job matches at some degree, were you guys told not to? Because certain announcers would, like, you have guys like Chris Cruz, or there's different ones that would put over the job guy, the enhancement guy, more than others. It's just, you think, is this a personal preference if they know the guy or they like him or whatnot?
Personal preference, personal style. I think if we were produced a certain way in WWE, and we never were, I think they would say, talk about the enhancement guy less. Because I would, most of the time, especially when I was booking them, I knew them and I knew they were good. And I felt like they were, for the most part, not all, but they were good enough to at least be considered to potentially be in the developmental system. And I figured, what's the harm in putting out some good tape on somebody that I think is at least halfway decent? Now, if I didn't know the guy, because sometimes it would be, hey, bring 3 others.
All right.
So you had that. But I didn't get heat. Christian got heat because I booked Loki as an extra, and Christian and Madison Square Garden, the two of them wrestled each other, and Christian gave most of the match away and made Loki look like $1 million. And of course, Christian beat Loki, which was the point of the match, and it got a tremendous reaction. But Christian got yelled at for giving away too much of the match, which is a fair point.
It's see, you weren't there quite when they had like superstars where it was 30 matches in a row.
Churning out the fact, yeah, it was making sausage. Yeah. I wasn't there during those days.
Yes, I was, and it was like, actually Vince has commentated my matches before, which was Gorilla Monsoon, guys like that. So it was kind of cool. Gordon Soley, that was to me was the holy grail. So Jim Ross, all the guys. So it was kind of cool. But I mean, yeah, there was a lot of stinkers too that were job guys that just deserved to go out there and just get the shit beat out of them.
Right.
So
I do remember one of the most famous enhancement matches, one of the famous, job guy matches that I saw. I watched it on TV. Sonny T of the Southern Posse, and Perfect, because he was Sonny Trout, so Perfect and Vince did every fish pun that they possibly could. They had such a good time, and I don't remember who he wrestled. How about that? I remember the enhancement guy, but not the over guy. Where did the term job guy come from? Where did the term jobber come from? Do you think that was part of like that secret language that they used to have to do when transporting finishes over, Western Union over the telegraph?
You know what? That quite possibly could be. I'm not really sure. I don't know the history of where it comes from. I guess we'd have to get with one of the wrestling historians. Is there any jobber historians out there?
I'm sure there are jobber historians. There's a
I mean,
historian for
besides that
just
one,
about, huh?
except for that one guy that does all those. What is it, on YouTube? He does those shorts. This is a WCW. He does WCW throwback like shorts all the time.
Yeah. Does he
Yeah, I
take a
don't.
dump on the? Does he take a dump on the job guys or what?
Sometimes he does, and sometimes he puts them over. It's kind of, back and forth. He likes to find the very obscure jobbers that's been there one time that, was a one and done, never
Yeah.
came back, and, do things about him.
Um. Yeah. I would say it's so funny how regionally or whatever the terms are used, and in Japan, they call them job boys, which to me is even like more demeaning a term. And like
Well,
Tiger Hattori was always the best. Oh man, you fucking job boy.
yeah, that's what we were called. That was the term when I started was job boy.
Huh.
Yeah, they used it here. It was job boy. I guess it evolved to being jobber,
You grew up
you know, all the pronouns now. What's your pronoun, jobber?
jobber.
That's what I say when they ask me my pronouns. I'm like, oh, I identify as him and Casey and jobber.
There's our thumbnail. I love it.
What's your
Casey's
pronoun? Jobber.
jobber. Casey does all the work for this show. I just show up, literally put the headset on and start talking to him. He's putting the thumbnails together. He's editing the clips. He does an awesome job. And that's why this is so much fun for me, because it's like a chance to just put on my hat and interview somebody that I know, but there's things about him that I don't know. Like
Right.
Casey, who was your if you had to rank like a jobber top five, is it playing the hits with kind of like Bob Cook and Mike Jackson and those types of guys? Or when you look at somebody who was a great enhancement guy, did you look at somebody with personality or somebody who was just like a block of wood, a blob of clay who could take bumps halfway decent, who was completely nondescript?
No, I never liked that because then I was never about like giving away the business. You're in there a job guy, you at least look like you stand a chance. So if you're just
Yeah.
a block of wood, it's like you're going through the motions and that's it. I like the guys who, it was funny as a job guy, you were never told anything, but there was kind of like unwritten rules what you can and can't do.
Ooh,
So whenever you would,
the unwritten rules of jobbers. Here we go.
yeah, like one of them is when you're wrestling a match and like you powder out of the ring, like that's not something you see a jobber do very often. I mean, I have once or twice without being shit canned out. I powdered out, as a coward heel and stuff like that, but not very often. But you do see
Mm-hmm.
some guys that have, do things like that. And even the offense, I remember riding back in the jobber van, going back with Penzer back to Florida, and all the guys are like, "Yeah, I got a punch in tonight." Yeah, well, he sold my this and that. What I always try to do was a guaranteed for them to sell. I don't care if it was Dan Spivey, Sid, whoever it is. When I was on the ground and they're reaching over to pick me up, and they're picking me up like this, so their whole under their armpit is all exposed. That soft side of the ribs. I'll take an open hand slap and pop, just pop that thing. Guaranteed to get a reaction on any person that you're working because it's
Did
gonna hurt.
did anybody say afterward, don't do that?
No, no one ever did. The only time I had someone complain was I wrestled Luger and Sting, and Bill Fonzie, the referee came up afterwards and asked me, he said, "Why were you stiffing Sting in there?" And I just looked at him, I'm like, seriously? And just walked away. I think I gave Sting a one boot when I was in the corner. So he asked me why I was stiffing him.
Well, that's all
So,
it took. Or
but
maybe your work looked so good, maybe it looked like you were killing him.
well, I would like to say that, but I was young into the business. I was very robotic then. Not, I was still young, learning.
Yeah.
You can tell when guys are more comfortable, being in the business. You can tell when they know the guy that they're wrestling because of the way they're in there. Like myself and Alex Wright, we had great matches all the time, and if you didn't know the difference, you would just think that I was, another guy because it was back and forth, probably 50-50.
Yeah.
So
He
and
was
he sold
he,
his ass off.
he's really good, right?
Yeah, yeah, he was. I would say that Alex Wright is probably, in my estimation, one of the most underrated wrestlers in that era. To me, he looked like a younger, slightly small, or much smaller, but smaller version of Luger. Except for Alex Wright. He had that. He was tall, that big built. He was a big guy. He looked lanky, but he was a pretty, solid, big kid. So
How
we were both
tall is
young and
how
everything. I'd say probably 6'4", 6'5".
really?
Yeah, yeah.
See, that's the
And
thing.
then
People don't realize like how tall some guys are. Like, they're surprised when they stand next to Randy Orton or they see a picture with Randy Orton and so, and they're like, "Wow, I didn't realize he was so tall."
yeah, I think the funniest thing that ever happened is I was standing outside the ring. I'm sorry, I was standing outside the hotel. It was myself, Jimmy Hart, Kevin Sullivan, Paul Orndorff. We're all there talking, and some Mark came up and looked at Orndorff and says, "Wow, you look so much bigger on TV." Paul was going to kill the guy.
Now we're gonna fight.
Yeah, but I will say this: um, Lex Luger was the only person that TV actually made him look smaller than in real life. Luger was an absolute monster when you're in the ring with him. I mean, it's just even seeing him walking anywhere. TV made him look smaller. It just didn't
That
do any justice to him at all.
that's amazing. Considering that, they always say the old axioms, right? TV puts on 10 pounds and TV does this and TV does that. I know again that Road Warrior Animal, Joe Laurinaitis, when he would walk down a hall, he was like at his peak. You know what I mean? He was almost like shoulder to shoulder with the concrete on both sides.
Yeah.
He was so you had to turn sideways when he would walk past, and was
Yeah,
always
and you
super
moved
nice.
because he was bigger.
Yeah,
The bigger guy got the right of way. That's how
and
it
he's
was.
the bigger guy gets the right of way. I think those are rules for that's a good rule for life. Bigger guy gets the right of way. And when you would let me ask you a question about etiquette, because etiquette is a huge thing with new people in companies today. And did you come in and shake everyone's hand?
Yeah, the way I looked at it is I'm going into their locker room. I'm going to go shake everyone's hand, say hello, this and that. And say everyone's sitting in there and somebody walks in, say Terry Funk walks in. I'll get up and I'll shake his hand. There's no more chairs. Hey, Terry, here, take my chair. Because what you're doing is, first of all, you're being respectful like you're supposed to be. You're showing the respect that's entitled, that he is due. Okay. Second of all, you don't realize it, but that stuff sticks in the back of their head, little things like that. And they'd be like, "Oh yeah," and be like, "Okay, thank you." Hey, what's your name? And you guys talk, carry on the conversation. You'd be surprised at little conversations that go a long way, especially when you're doing jobs on TV, because you would look for reasons to have a connection to where it might help you in the ring. I know it sounds crazy, but it's just like anything in life. You look for something that's gonna make it go a little easier for you. It would be the same way.
Yeah, and
So you would,
there's a difference between doing it as a kiss ass and trying to politic.
right. Yeah.
I understand it's the difference. The difference is because you want to let them know that if they get you, they're working with somebody who knows a thing or two and that they can
Correct.
be relaxed. No worries, Terry, or no worries, whomever. I know what I'm doing. I got this. And you don't have to say it because you shake someone's hand respectfully and you offer them a chair. You know how to act in a locker room, which means you're probably going to know how to act in the ring. Big difference there. Now, on a 2 or 3 day loop, do you shake hands every day when you get to the building?
Every day, every person you see.
That
How you
drives
doing?
me
How
up
you
a
doing?
wall, Casey.
I know it's crazy, but how you doing? How was your night last night? Oh, what'd you do? Again, it gives you opportunity to make conversation. You get to know him better, become friends with him. You'd be surprised how many guys would say the boys talk to themselves and say, "Yeah, I got uh Thompson and such and such. Oh yeah, I worked him the other day. Oh man, I worked him last week. That guy can take some bumps. He's good. This and that.
Mm-hmm.
They'll they share. They used to share what they knew about each other between them because there's nothing worse than a contract and over guy going out there with a job guy knowing nothing about him. So he's going to keep his match so basic where he doesn't look bad. He's not going to go out on a limb and try anything because he doesn't want to look bad on himself. So when he knew that, oh yeah, this guy can work, or like say, oh, I got Bob Cook. Okay, perfect. I can do whatever I want. You know, and that's where you wanted to get. So what made it really helped is when you're doing those 21-day shots at Disney or Universal, where you're
Mm-hmm.
working 21 days, 3 or 4 times a day, and you're with them for 10 hours. You get to know people really, really well. You
Right.
know,
And you're also, giving them a ride because you live local. Let's say you're giving them a ride back to the Residence Inn or whatever, or you're taking them to the store if they want to get some water or beer or whatever afterward.
right?
There's opportunities to bond. I'm a big
Smiz.
proponent, and maybe it's the time that we are in the business now that there's not whatever. I'm if people come over and shake my hand day one, that's fine. I'll go over to people that I know or recognize, or if I walk up to a group, you know what I mean? Especially somebody I don't know, young guys in the locker room, I'll go over and introduce myself. Because again, I'm the announcer, I'm the producer or whatever, and they're wrestler. So even if they're the lowest guy on the card, they're still higher than me. I will go over and shake all the referees' hands because again, referee is here, wrestler is here, announcer way down here.
Well, the
Anyway,
way we would look at it, the announcer was up here
yeah,
because he's the one on TV that can put you over and make you look good or make you look stupid. So I would always like, hey, Scott Hudson, hey, how you doing? Mike Tenay, all those guys. I would go up and buddy with them, just get to know them, for they remember who I am when they're in the ring and say, oh yeah, he's a good kid. Yeah, he's a good kid on TV.
yeah. By the way, I got a new coffee mug this week. I just want everybody to enjoy. And
Ah,
I also
yes, sir.
I have my friend TJ and his girl went on vacation, and they had a hot dog at this famous restaurant, the Distinguished Ween in Morrisville, Indiana. I
Oh,
believe
wow.
that's the
Nice.
town. The Distinguished
There
Ween,
you go.
thedistinguishedween.com, the Distinguished Ween on Facebook as well. Shout out to our future sponsor, the Distinguished Ween. The Distinguished Ween
Yeah.
presents the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast with Casey Thompson. I always look at, and then day two, for me, if I'm seeing the same guys again, I go out of my way to say, hey, no need to shake hands today, boys. We're all friends. Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Wave. I
Yeah.
got that from Steve Carino, who hates shaking hands. He's a bit of a
Oh,
germaphobe.
gotcha.
He's a germaphobe,
Okay.
and I'm not a germaphobe. I just don't want anybody to feel awkward around me. So
Yeah.
I try to disarm the whole situation by saying, no need to shake hands. We're all friends. Hi, everyone. And they get it.
Yeah.
But then, of course, I tell anybody that I know in the business, if they ever get a chance to go to NXT for a tryout or whatever, and they see Steve, go up and shake his hand. Give him a
Give him a hug.
handshake, try to give him a hug. Yeah, loves all that stuff. He loves it. When you look at guys that were, I'm sure there was some ego amongst the enhancement guys. And was there resistance? Was there a hierarchy within, let's say, in the jobber van? Was there
Not our
veteran jobber versus younger jobber?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it was kind of cliquish at points, at times. But then it became if you were a regular in that van,
Mm-hmm.
then we all knew each other because we rode with each other so much. Every Monday and Tuesday, we're in that van, going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, myself and Scott Allen, we were both the same age. We started going up together. His brother John would go up. And then we have Bob Cook was in there all the time, Chris Sullivan, both, Rick Thames and Sonny Trout. They would go in there. We'd have, what's the guy's name from Miami? He was intense. He would have sleeveless shirt on. He had a sleeveless tuxedo at his daughter's wedding. He'd have his wrist tape on the whole entire big old Brian Carr was his name,
Okay.
a Miami guy. Brian Carr. He was big. He looked like he was an over guy, like just jacked, all, on the gas and everything, tan and everything. And he was the drizzling shits, though. I mean, to me, he was. He was just the shits. Nice guy, very, very intense, but we've had many accidents driving that van. I'll tell a quick story real quick. How I used to work those guys all the time. So we had so many different accidents from people driving, pens are falling asleep and, rolling the van 3 or 4 times on, 75 so everyone was paranoid about someone falling asleep. So what I would do is I would wait till we get in there when it's my turn to drive. And I'm like, I'm totally fine. And so I'm waiting. I see everyone in the rearview mirror dozing off, heads back and everything. And I'll do like, pull it to the left. Don't. And then I pull it back. They're like, "Yeah, you okay?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm good. All right." 2 or 3 minutes later, and they start dozing off. Holy shit! What the hell? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. One more time. Pull the car over. Can't drive no more. I'm like, okay. I get myself kicked out of the driver's seat into the back seat, and I'll just like snooze the whole time. We're coming back from trips, and we're in the store, and this was not doing TV. We were doing a show up in Tennessee. We're coming back, and um, they're all getting like mini thins and stuff like that. And what are you buying? I said, "Oh, I'm looking for Tylenol PM or something to go to sleep." They're like,
Mini
"What do you mean?" I
thins.
said,
Mini thins
I, s-
are like caffeine.
well, "Yeah."
Yeah.
So they're like,
Not
"Seriously?" I said,
Girl
I'm
Scout
going to sleep.
cookies.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
getting
Not the same.
Tylenol PM. You're doing it
I'll fall
wrong.
asleep. Yeah, no, they're like, I said, I don't give. You gonna want to die? I said, I don't give a shit. Wake me up when we get to Orlando, and I'll take the Tylenol PMs or whatever it was, and I'd pass out sleeping in the back. So
Man.
it, yeah, it was. Those are some crazy times. We've been pulled over by, I don't know, they're federal agents or whatever. A cop had a car, look, with bullet holes in it. He had his radio. He had a gun, radio stuck in here. He had a gun in here. Pulled us over, ripped open the van, and the guy, and he was like yelling at us. At this time, I'm sleeping on top of the luggage in the back of the van. I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
just sinking in because this dude's like crazy. We don't like your type here because Georgia law enforcement at the time hated Florida drivers. They just hated people
Oh,
from Florida. I don't know why. And the guy's like, "Oh my God, I don't have a license." So they're like,
Jesus.
"Sucks to be you." And so he gives him his ID. They're like, "What's wrong with your license?" It's suspended. So he gives the cop or whoever it was, the very irate law enforcement officer, his ID card. He looks at it. He yells at him and says, "I better not see you here again." And we take off. He's like, like freaked out. And we're like, "What'd he say?" He says, "Just said, get out of here. He don't want to see our kind here no more." We're like, okay. So we're like, someone else driving. Like, "Oh, I mean, it's sure still your turn to drive. Keep driving. So we kept on going and everything. Man, there's millions and millions of stories. I got pulled over. Um, we were doing the WWF. Me and Scott and John Allen. We were in the Lincoln Town car. We were driving up, and the oldest one, John, he got pulled over on the way. Got a speeding ticket. And then his brother was driving on the way. He got pulled over, speeding ticket. And then John was driving again, got pulled over again, got a speeding ticket.
In the same
We're
state
on the
or
way,
on the same trip?
the same trip. Now we're on the return. We're coming home. John's driving again. He gets another speed. He gets 3 speeding tickets in one trip.
Oh my
Then
God.
it's my turn to drive. I'm going 105 in a 55. I get pulled over. The cop is pissed. He pulls me out of the car and everything. He said, why do you have to go so fast? I said, listen, I wrestle with the WWF. I said, we've been on the road. I just embellished everything. We've been on the road for a while. I just want to get home and all this stuff. And he's like, you don't wrestle. I said, yeah, I do. Seriously? I said, here, let me open the trunk. I'll show you my boots, my bat, stuff. I popped the trunk, opened up. You see my boots and this and that. I had like some gimmick pictures. He's like, oh, my kids are wrestling fans. I'm like, oh, you want me to sign one to him? I signed one to him, and I got a warning instead of getting a ticket.
Jesus,
And
they're
he's like, why are those guys laughing? I said, oh, those guys are laughing because one guy got 3 tickets on this trip. The other one got one, and I'm getting a warning. And he's just like, this was up in North Florida.
damn.
So,
And Shador Sanders getting pulled over for doing the same thing you did. You know what I mean? He didn't
yeah.
have gimmick pictures. He didn't have his cleats with him, I guess. So in the enhancement guy in the jobber hierarchy,
Mhm.
there was, now you guys would all talk, I'm sure, about who you wrestled. Would you
Sure.
help each other? Hey, when you wrestle so and so, he likes to do this, or
Yes.
make sure you tell him that you can do that thing that you do so well because you're going to look good doing it and he's going to like it. Did you guys help each other in that regard, or was it sort of you're on your own?
No, we would help each other. Definitely would help each other, especially if we get there. The board wasn't made up, and then eventually, whoever would come up start writing out the board, and you're like, oh, man, I got such and such. Oh yeah, be careful of him. He's stiff, or this or that, or oh yeah, I wrestled him last time. I'll go say we had a good match. I'll say something to him, or oh yeah, this
Okay.
guy he likes to do this, and you know this is the spot he'll want to do, or there's a million different things. But yeah, definitely the boys, we all would help each other, and then afterwards we would critique everyone's match, and tell them what they would say, what we should have done. What we did different, what didn't look good, and basically it was all about us selling and taking bumps.
Yeah.
So
Now, I've heard this from guys that I knew that had been doing jobs for a while. There were certain, when you said before clicks, there was a certain group, because they would have 8, 10, 15, whatever, however many different enhancement guys at TV. And there was a certain group of guys, and I don't remember where this was. I want to say it's up in the Northeast somewhere, like maybe New England, maybe upstate New York. And one group of guys had a reputation of being the pot guys. Okay. Now, this, of course, was before anything marijuana was legal in most states, and certainly was heavy into like the drug testing era. And there was a real stigma about it within wrestling. This is in the early mid 90s. And my one friend told me that when we would get to TV, we would see where the pot guys were, and we made sure not to associate with them because we didn't want any heat. We didn't want to be seen with them. Would you guys be wary of another group of guys not in your van that you didn't necessarily know that you might say, let's avoid them because they have a rep of, they've got a lot of heat on them, or this guy's a mark, or whatever?
yes and no. I mean, it wasn't. We kind of all stayed together. Our group that drove up in the van together. I will tell you that. Speaking of, let's see, Brad Armstrong, Steve Armstrong, Tracy Smothers. They used to ride in this little mobile little camper, right? And they would show up late a lot to the TV. They always missed their. We had to be there at 1 or 2 o'clock. And when they pulled in the parking lot, the door would open and smoke would just arise from everywhere because they've been burning, smizzing the whole way and everything. And I remember that was a thing where they like, what happened? Why are you late? Oh, such and such read the map wrong. And, they come up for whatever reason. Basically, they were just smizzing the whole way and just kept on going.
Right. They
So,
just did whatever they wanted
but
to do.
yeah, you knew like if a guy was a heat seeker, is just oh yeah, I'm not even gonna associate with this guy. I'm not even gonna be nowhere near him. You would stick around the guys that you knew that you have to realize a lot of these guys are all brand new wrestlers that are going up to do jobs. you kind of stay away from the ones that are too green. And if you didn't know and they weren't from your area, that you wrestled on the independents with and stuff like that, there's a million things that people are like too much of a mark. You would stay away from a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of different things like that. I will say, I don't remember drugs in our van being that bad, for that group of guys. I know drinking was crazy. I remember I had to drive home once from after TV in Atlanta once, and because John Allen, Bob Cook was hammered, Penzer was hammered, Bob and John were in the back seat. Penzer was in the front seat. He kept on trying to burn me with a cigarette lighter, and finally, I was going about 95 miles an hour because I was pissed because I was the only sober one, so I had to do all the driving this time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're driving. He's trying to burn me with a cigarette lighter. And I just let go of the wheel and just started pounding on him, gave him a big old goose egg. And we stopped at the store. He's like, man, I would leave you here, but you'll tell Jody and get me fired and all this stuff. So, I mean, we had, some things like that. That rent-a-car was trash time we got back, though. That headliner was gone. They tore up that thing. So,
Always
yeah, I
get the
mean,
insurance.
yeah. When I first started, I was too young, so UF would send a voucher down where I could rent the car because I was only 18 years old. And I remember once one of the cars came back, the key was super glued into the ignition. The glue was on the super glue, the high heat. The radio was up as loud as it would go. The cigarette. I mean, this was a brand new Lincoln Town car. The inside of it was burnt. The headliner is down, and I turned it in the middle of the night. Just left a note, put it in the box because the key was still in the ignition. I'm like, key in the ignition. Any problems, call Carolyn with the World Wrestling Federation.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I lost
Carolyn's,
bookings for a while after that.
yeah. And again, you never let guys take their car. If we can ever have old Penis Godwin on, I would love to ask him about the time that he and Hank let Jake Roberts take the rental car and it was gone. What do you mean?
Jeez.
What do you mean it's gone? Where's Jake? It's gone, guys. Heb, it's gone. What do you mean gone? Well, we gave Jake the keys to the rental car. What in the why in the hell? He said he needed to go see somebody. He needed to stop at the store. He needed to. Yeah, they found the car.
Stop.
They found the car eventually in the hood. It was not good. Those things happen.
I think Public Enemy did that with the ring truck in WCW.
Now that was Johnny more than Teddy, because Teddy would never do such a thing. Teddy was a saint.
Yeah, I wrestled those guys before and had to do the power bomb through the table and everything.
Ridiculously over, right? Just tremendously over.
Yeah, we just stood there just waiting. Me and I had some big guy next to me, a big giant. So I knew I was taking the finish as soon as I seen them. Because another thing is when you're in a tag team match, you try to be the first one to go talk to the tag team you're working to try to set things up because they're only going to work a spot probably with one person. They're going to take the finish on another person, things like that. So I remember once I was working Orndorff and Paul Roma, and I knew Roma because we played cards and stuff. So Orndorff's like, you know how to take the pile driver? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, make sure the kid that we're with knows how to take it properly, how we do it right. I'm like, all right, no problem. And so Paul's like, yeah, I'll start with you. We'll do something, do a spot. I'm like, all right, no problem. But
there was probably a thought that they didn't necessarily want to beat you into powder, right? Let's beat the new guy.
Yeah, I mean, I knew them, or I got to them first and set up a rapport. So they was like, oh, you're working Casey and the other kids. So I would beat them too. Another time, WCW was trying to give Scott and Steve Armstrong a push, and I don't even know if it ever made it to TV. I wrestled them with Dave Heath, Gangrel. He was Vampire Warrior. But I was buddies with, the Armstrongs. I worked for them all the time. So I wish I could see the match because they put me over, squashed out Dave, and did the finish on him.
Jeez.
And it was right before he got started with went to New York as Gangrel.
Damn.
Because I knew them,
Yeah, and no offense to you nor to Dave, but, if I'm booking that, I'm thinking like, well, I don't know what I'd be thinking. I would just leave it up to you guys. It wouldn't matter to me who would take the finish in that regard. because you're wrestling a babyface team, so it's like they're
No,
not
they
going to.
were heels. They were
Oh,
heels
they were
because they were trying to. This is the time they were trying to make them like a white supremacist kind of team,
what?
like some red. They're wearing like camouflage shorts, like boots and stuff. Yeah, it was a weird thing. I don't think any. I think they ended up scrapping the whole thing because it just wasn't. We had some good matches with them, so
They
it
would
was.
try anything.
I do know that one thing is some wrestlers would really be very respectful and take care of the job guy. I remember growing up watching Florida Championship Wrestling. I was a
Mm-hmm.
big Billy Jack fan, Billy Jack Haynes.
Okay.
And yeah, you see, that's the same reaction. I was sitting there watching the monitor once with Arn, and Arn Anderson was like, "So, who's like your big fan growing up?" And I'm like, "Billy Jack," and he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, he's one of the big first bodybuilder big guys.
Yeah.
So, but I would tell you when he came in the WCW as Black Hawk or whatever, Night
Black
Stalker or something like that,
Black
wearing
blood.
yeah, that's it. He was like he was so nice, respectful, kind, was like, "Thank you. You guys are what makes us stars. If it wasn't for you guys are not jobbers. You guys are star makers and, all kinds of stuff like that." He was really cool. I
Trying
know
to
Rob
church
Van
it up
Dam
for
has
you.
talked yeah, I know Rob Van Dam has talked a lot about it on his podcast and different things like that when me and Rob worked Sid in a handicap match
Mm-hmm.
and he power bombed I think he powerbombed Rob onto the gurney. He powerbombed me on top of Rob and all this stuff. But afterwards, he came up to us and said, "Listen, guys, I was right here, but now because you guys, I'm right here." And it says it's not much, but he gave us both $20 each. He said, go down the road, buy a beer, get yourself dinner or something. Just wanted to show his appreciation to us, which that was kind of unheard of. Not many guys would show their appreciation to you and give you any kind of money or anything. They say, "Oh, thanks, man, appreciate it," stuff like that. So for him to go out of his way to give us $20, and I think right after that they dropped the title on him too. So that was it was real cool. But and you can look up the matches on YouTube. It's Mike Casey, that was my WWF name again, and Matt Burns was Robbie's name against Sid.
They
So
loved
that
they loved putting inside terminology names on enhancement guys, on job guys in WWF. They loved it. That's a Monsoon thing. He got such a chuckle out of it. That was his thing. Now, Monsoon, of course, and the gorilla position got its name because he was the one who was with the stopwatch at the monitor behind the curtain. And he would, if there was a time change or whatever, he'd be the one to tell you right before you went.
yeah.
Story goes, and I don't know where this was, and I'm not sure if it was a TV or not. I think it probably would have been that the guys went over their time, and he had communication with one of the other road agents who was at ringside, who would give cues to the referee because they didn't have earpieces back then, and they're over their time. What were the cues, by the way? Do you remember? Do you remember the time cues? Did you ever see them? Do you remember the signals?
Oh, yeah, I mean, they would take the pencil out of their ear, or they would do this, or they would do like, they kind of some kind of iggy like that. But they finally got to where all the referees had IFBs, earpieces, and they would just tell you to take it home and different things
Monsoon
like that.
guys went over their time, and Monsoon allegedly, and I don't know where this happened, but he came out and he was holding up the stopwatch, like showing the guys in the ring.
Oh, that's
What are you going to
great.
do? And then there was, of course, like Mr. Coffee in Memphis, who was, office stooge, and he would come flip his tie, and the fans got smart to it after a while, and he'd be like, "Oh, go!" The fans would shout, "Go in the back, Mr. Coffee, let them wrestle."
When my daughter went to that independent show over the
Yeah.
weekend, I sent her a text. I said, "Hey, start a chant when they start wrestling. Take it home. Take it home."
My
She's like,
God,
"Okay."
you guys that's a jerk. That's terrible. Take it home.
Oh, it's great.
I know, I love it. When you were first in getting into wrestling, did they still have a finish room, or was it common to just say who was up and who was down in front of the boys?
No, at first they would take us into a room, like a small room. You kind of walk in one with the referee,
Mm-hmm.
and they would say, hey, you got Sid tonight, 3 minutes. He's going to powerbomb you. All right, that's it. Out the door you go. So, yeah, they had a finish room at first.
They did it
And different
privately.
people, yeah, at first, yeah.
That's a generational thing. And for me, for years of being in WWE and wherever, it wasn't a big thing to have a conversation in the open. And, you know, sometimes on shows read through the format. But as I've gotten older and Bob Evans has like scolded me about that, you guys, that's your business. You know what I mean? So we're going to pull everybody in the room. Not that we're trying to protect the business in that regard, but we're trying to protect your business, Casey Thompson business. Because if you're
MXPW,
if you're putting someone over, then you're doing business with them, and this is our way of respecting you and thanking you. But now it's like there's a board and a name is underlined, and that's who's going over.
right?
And it's like,
well, when I ran MXPW, I brought everyone involved in that match, the referee of the match, both the wrestlers, everyone, the agent. I had an agent. I had Dennis Knight and Chaz from the Headbangers. They were my agents that would help, guide everything the right way to make sure where it needed to be. And then we had the camera guy in there. So they would say, hey, at one point, I'm like, anything the camera guy needs to know about the match. Because we want to make sure that we're not a high budget like WWE with, 8 cameras worth a 2 or 3 camera shoot, usually 2. So, let us know that the cameraman will make sure that he's there, for it and everything. And let me know where it is, and I'll buzz them in the IFB, give them an Iggy that something's going to come up soon. So I would have everyone in the room. We go over to the finish. There was no gaga, no bullshit. It was just straight to the point. This is what you got. You got 13 minutes. You're going out first. This, that, boom, boom, boom. Anything for the camera guy, boom, out. Next person in. So I always try to make it look like I'm big on perception. People go, the boys, especially the ones on independent, like, man, they would talk and say, man, that was something about that show was just like so much different than the rest of the ones that we work on and everything. And that's what I always wanted to do. I wanted to separate myself from everyone else and give them a little taste of what real wrestling is like, shall I say. So that's how I always did everything.
and I didn't realize it, but when Cuban was booking in Hudson, and and he had a finish room, and I didn't even realize that that there was another way to do it. And then after a time, you just get away from it. And I was flattered that he had me in there, but the reason that he had me in there is because I was the ring announcer. So I would need to know, like, how long the match was going, or who was winning and who was not winning, and how to say the winner by disqualification is so and so. Yay! But as a result of disqualification, title does not change hands. Still the whatever champion, so and so. Boo. And I understood that then, but I was like, this really it protects the business of the guy who's doing the favor. And I just thought that as I get older now, I look on it almost fondly, but it's like, no, we're going to get back to that. We need to get back to that, and we will get back to that at my show.
Yeah.
But I love it. I think that's the best way to do it, Casey. I think you did it exactly the right way.
And I tell you what, a ring announcer can make or break a show too, because when I first started, I used, as much as we were always fine, he would always mess with me, and we had little heats here and there, nothing big. First person I called when I had my show as for my ring announcer was David Penzer.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought him in, and he's like, where's the format? He made the board. He did everything. He just jumped into his role like he would normally do. And I didn't have to worry about anything. I knew everything would be fine. Same like when you came in. You just jumped in. Where's the format? Okay. And did what you needed to do. But then when my partner was like, hey, can we get rid of, not that nothing's wrong, but I have this guy that I'm already paying to be a DJ. Can we bring him in the guy Tommy, and just have him be the ring announcer. He can talk and stuff. I had to literally work twice as hard because I had to tell him every little detail about what was going on and all that stuff. It was just like, just drove me crazy. It made everything so much harder. So having a good ring announcer that knows what he's doing is like big, huge, plus on the show. It
Right. And
can make it or break it.
I know that, as we get along here in time and we're going to bring this edition to a close, that if you're in front of the camera or behind the camera, it doesn't matter where you are. You have an important job. You needed to have the camera person in that locker room to hear that finish, or the director or whoever was calling the shots, because they needed to know what they needed to know. And they're not there because they're marks or they want to know wrestling's fake and this guy's going to win and this guy, it's all predetermined. No, man, they need to know it because it's their job. And you've got to smarten them up as much as you can. I mean, you may not necessarily tell them how the sausage is made. Like in New Japan, there's only a couple of people on the production crew that are smart, and they don't smarten anyone else up. So they shoot it like sports. Sometimes they miss a shot. Most of the time they get it right. But they protect their business in a certain way. That only the director or whatever, a couple of key personnel knew, and that was it. But I just love that. I love all that inside stuff, and those are things that the fans may know, some may not know, and that's the reason why a lot of people have been tuning in, Casey, and been watching these, consuming these shorts like crazy, and downloading the whole episode wherever podcasts are available, watching them on YouTube, is because they love these stories and they love this time that we're talking about. Because a lot of people that are now in their 40s that are decision makers were kids.
Yeah, I know.
When you were wrestling, when I was announcing, and it's like, oh, I grew up watching you. I'm like, shut up, you make me feel old.
Yeah, I know. It's
Big
crazy.
businessman. But no, I'm glad we got your pronouns sorted. I'm glad we've identified the fact that jobber is not a slur and that we can use that term freely, but always respectfully, because we always do have love for the guys who were in the ring, currently in the ring, and I love the time frame that we're talking about. I love the history of all this. We do need I will do some research. I may reach out to Cornette, because he would know.
Nice.
And
yeah,
I think I'll just send him a note and see if we can drill down to that. And if anybody may know, it may be Cornette, or he may say, who may know is like Scott Teal or some other historian to find out. But all right, Casey, we've done it again, my boy. Another episode, and next week we'll have more. Next week I want to focus on your time when you were wrestling on the independents. And I want to talk about some of that, because not a lot of that is talked about. And it was not a great time for independent wrestling in the mid-'90s, in the early 90s in the state of Florida. So I want to kind of turn back the clock. And when the lights were not so bright, what was it like for Casey Thompson? And what was it like for the wrestling scene as a whole? But we'll touch that next week. Another great edition of the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast. That is your host, Casey Thompson. And I'm the sidekick here, Kevin Kelly. I'm the garnish on the plate. So for all of us here, the jobber. That's it for this edition of the In-Ring Wrestling Podcast. For Casey Thompson, I'm Kevin Kelly, and we'll see you next time.